David, great to have you back. We actually have an anniversary that we're celebrating now.
We do? Is it
we
mine?
do. Yeah, no. It is our guest, Melinda Miguel, who's with us today. Melinda.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So you do have an anniversary, don't you?
We do. It is the 30th anniversary of the Florida Inspector General Act of 1994.
That's impressive.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you start it?
I did. Well, I had a role. I had the privilege of going to work for my mentor, Marvin Doyle, who came down with then Governor Childs to implement the IG Act here in Florida. And so I got to observe his hiring of many of the inspectors general and participate with some of the initial kickoff functions and kind of learn from him and watch him with what he was doing. And so here I am 30 years later.
So you've seen it from the ground up?
I've seen it from the ground up, yes.
Wow, okay.
What was the genesis of it? Why did they feel they needed this?
Well, then Governor Childs had run for office and won the governorship here in Florida. And he came to Florida. One of his major deliverables was that he was going to implement the IG Act here. And that's based upon his experience at the federal government level. He had served in the Senate for several years and had observed the federal model of inspectors general and wanted to bring that to the state of Florida. So we adopted an inspector general in every single state agency, which was exactly the way that they were formulated up in the federal government.
Nice. Did it become what he had envisioned or more than that? Or
I would imagine that it became exactly what he envisioned. It was something that I think that he set in motion whenever he served here in the Florida governor's office. One of the things that he was adamant about was being the eyes and ears of the governor and being able to observe what was going on in government and to communicate that back to his office.
David, she had one key word that she used that I know I saw your eyes flash on that, which was the mentor that she had starting this.
Yes, yeah. So I know in my career there's been some incredible mentors that have made all the difference for me. Mm-hmm. And we've talked previously about the value of mentorship and coaching and having wise counselors. So what has that been for you in your career from the beginning of not just the IG Act, but just professionally speaking? What has that meant for you?
Well, for me, when I met Marvin, I sat on his doorstep, literally, for 2 different times whenever he had positions that were open in his office. And I was adamant that I wanted to go to work for him, and I wanted to learn from him, and I wanted to see exactly how he implemented the Inspector General Act. And I loved the way that he operated, and I loved the way that he interacted with the agency heads and with the governor's office. He did not work at sword's point with the leadership. He was a partner and a friend of the management team. He was working diligently to add value to the system and to make sure that we were making meaningful recommendations for improved efficiency in government. And I was able to observe and watch him in motion and learn from him. And I think that having a mentor is extremely important for my career. I've had several, and including Marvin, over the course of my career. And in fact, I even had dinner with Marvin on Friday night. I go to his house almost every Friday night and have pizza with him. He had his 84th birthday just this last week. So shout out to Marvin Doyle for his birthday and for the Inspector General Act anniversary.
Wow. So what has that mentorship been for? What has it meant to you over your entire career?
Well, I believe with Marvin, he believed in me before I knew that I could believe in myself. And I believe that he had confidence in me and sent me to train from some of the best and brightest in the business. He sent me to a variety of different courses and invested a lot in me to teach me how to audit and investigate. And I believe that he saw in me something before I did, and gave me the confidence because he believed in me. And I think that that's extremely important as a young professional, to have somebody that believes in you, somebody that's a champion for you in your corner.
Do you think that's important, not just at the beginning of your career, but at different phases?
Absolutely. I think that having mentors and friends along the way is extremely important, because you need to be able to get candid advice from people along the way. And you need to have that trusted advisor, so that you've got somebody that will give you feedback that you know that you can count on.
How much do you think that changes? Because you hear all the time that in the beginning, if you look at leaders, in the beginning they invest in themselves, how much knowledge they can obtain and learn more and more. And then later, as they hit that leadership position, the difference is they invest in others and start helping them learn and grow. And did you find that in your path as well? Do you still do the invest in yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, you hear about the 80-20 rule a lot of times in life. And oftentimes, 80% of the work may get done by 20% of the people. You've heard those kinds of analogies. And I believe that that's true for yourself as well. You've got to be dedicating a portion of your time to your own self-development, whether that's the 80-20 rule, or whether you dedicate 1 hour a week to doing something that you're trying to improve on. I think that having that and commitment to a lifelong learning is extremely important. I know for me, at this stage of my career, I'm trying to leave a legacy for some of my team. And so it's extremely important for me to be able to invest in them and get them ready for the next big project or the next big event.
So right now, I think what everybody would really like to know is, what's Melinda Miguel doing to invest in herself right now?
Wow. Okay. Well, there's lots that I can improve upon. I think that there's a lot of things that I would like to accomplish. There's still a whole lot that I want to give to the state of Florida. I have a lot of current goals that I'm working on with specific projects, but as far as I believe for me that focusing a percentage of my time on what goes on in my mind and how I talk to myself, how I envision my success, or how I envision the completion of a project is extremely important. I think that one of the things that I'm trying to work with on my team is we set our intention of what we want to accomplish before we go in and do a project, before we go in and have a meeting. We want to know what success looks like before we even start. Because if we are able to collaborate on what success looks like, then we're able to set expectations and hold each other accountable for what that outcome will be. And oftentimes I feel like if I focus on a positive outcome or a productive outcome, or maybe a sense of accomplishment at the end of a project, I think it's extremely important that we collectively know what that means so that we can work together on trying to achieve success. One of the things that I do with my team is I go and meet with each and every one of my team members and want to find out what is it that I can do to help them be successful. And I think that that's extremely important, that I really listen to what that means for them, because what that means could change maybe in this decade or in this project. But if I'm really listening to what they want to accomplish, and if I'm doing my job well, it's preparing them for their next big, exciting endeavor, whatever that is. And if I'm doing my job well, that means working myself out of a job and getting the team ready to step into my shoes.
So I think what you're talking about is building a culture in your team, and that only works if the leader is authentic, right? We've talked about being authentic, authenticity, and so talk a little bit about being authentic, especially in the industry that you're in, where people sometimes might be uncertain or fearful of engaging with the Inspector General's office. Talk about what that means and what that's done for your teams and for the interactions with agencies and officials.
One of the things that Marvin instilled upon me is that we are going to be viewed by a lot of people when we come in and interact with them in sort of the gotcha mentality, and that the inspector general function can be about a whole lot more. It can be about adding value and treating someone more as your number one client than your number one gotcha. I think it's extremely important to go into it with that sort of mentality. It shifts the conversation entirely whenever I'm there to serve. And if I'm there to serve the mission and I understand the other person's perspective about that mission, then I can craft my approach to collaborate with that individual, and we can build something synergistically together that I think is going to be so much more meaningful than if we're working against each other or at cross purposes. Sometimes it's a little difficult to be authentic, I think, for any of us, especially maybe in this line of work with being accountable. People think that you're the rule follower at all times, and you're the consummate, maybe the most ethical person, and you're like almost living life like a pope or a prophet or something. And that's a difficult role for me as a human to try to strive for. I'm as human as they come, and I make mistakes, just like anybody else. But I also try to stand for what's right and try to stand up for what's open. Maybe serve even as a voice for somebody that doesn't have one. So as far as trying to be authentic in what we're doing, I think that if you break down some of those old labels of what we are and really try to relate with somebody, I think that we can accomplish a whole lot more. Maybe the vinegar and honey kind of concept comes to mind. So,
yeah, and doing what's right and doing what's ethical doesn't mean that you're the police for I'm going to grab you if you're not doing something. I mean, you can take someone with the best motives, but it may not be the right path that they're choosing, and help steer them toward, well, if you want to do this successfully, here's the right path for doing that. It's kind of helping others find, how to succeed. The same thing. It's not catching them doing something wrong.
It's more catching them doing something right.
Yeah, or helping them be in a position to do it right.
Sure.
So I do think that majority of the people that we work with have the right intentions. It's just not fully understanding the process or thinking that there might be a shortcut to the process.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a mentor once say, it's important as a leader to catch your people in the act of excellence. And when you do that, you reward them, you acknowledge them, you recognize, because it builds a culture where those type of behaviors are recognized and others will see it and they'll emulate it, right? Instead of just focusing on the negative all the time.
Sure.
So, we talked about being authentic. We talked about building a culture. And I'm very, very blessed to be able to mentor a lot of up-and-comers. And I always get the question when I talk to them about mentorship, David, how do I find these mentors? Where are they? People struggle with that. What advice would you give our audience to how do you find mentors who can be an advocate for you in rooms that you're not in?
Well, Melinda, you actually answered that for us. You said sit on their doorstep. Basically, you said you stalked your first mentor.
I did.
I had never learned that before. So
that's one tactic for sure.
That is one tactic. I told him he better hire me because I was going to keep trying.
So
persistence.
Persistence.
There we go. Okay.
I don't think there's any harm in asking somebody if they wouldn't mind being a mentor. If you see somebody that you admire and that you enjoy being around or that you enjoy the conversation with, I think that, you can ask that person and approach that person and ask them, would they mind mentoring you? And, most of the time it's going to be yes.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think we both took a moment there. We're like, yeah, that's actually true.
I was actually trying to think if I've ever had a bad mentor. But I don't believe I ever have, because you look for certain traits and qualities in someone. That's what attracts you to them to be that mentor.
Sure.
It's what you would like to become.
Well, I submit to you that there's probably some people that you may have not viewed as a mentor, but you learned something from them about what you didn't want to be.
Truer words have never been spoken.
Did you want to give examples?
Oh, no, not today.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They become unexpected teachers.
Absolutely.
Because they've shown you things or taught you things sometimes the hard way.
Absolutely.
How you didn't want to lead or emulate. But
One of my greatest lessons, I think, was learning from one of those examples. You know, where it was probably a very tough lesson as I was going through it, but in the end, I learned exactly what I didn't want to be.
I think that's a matter of perspective, though.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because some people walk away from that and be bitter and be angry about it. And if you hold that perspective on that experience, you'll never learn from it.
That's true.
But if you take what you just described as like, oh, that was not fun, but there's a lesson to be learned so I can become better. I mean, that's what life's all about.
Absolutely. That continual learning.
Yes.
And you do have that one, as you described, here's the things that were important to me that I wanted to achieve and accomplish. It's interesting, what you focused on is not necessarily what attracted me to want to work with you. Now, granted, you would accomplish those things; those were impressive, and that in its right, in its own right, is something that is important and you're looking for. But it was really trust that it just comes from you, that this is a person that I can speak with and trust their response. And that means a tremendous amount.
There's a book that I've read, it's called The Speed of Trust. And I think that is an extremely important lesson, is to know when you can have that speed, you can have that velocity. Whenever you meet somebody, then you can kind of cut through the noise and be authentic with that individual and be real. And that you know that you are safe in that person's space, and that they're holding a space for you, whether it comes from a place of respect. I think that those are always great relationships that I encourage people to take advantage of and hold on to them tightly. I joke in the IG world that we have so very few friends, so whenever I get them, I like to keep them.
Yeah.
You know?
I've always said that trust is the currency of business.
Ooh.
If I don't know you, I don't trust you. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to do business with you, right? So if you have that underlying foundation of trust, business transactions usually go a lot better. If there is a lack of trust and you have to do business, that creates risk and uncertainty, which then usually causes business deals to go sideways or creates more challenges, which is more costly. So again, trust is the currency of business.
Well, it takes a lot to build that too, especially if you look at our environment. So you have government, government can be agencies, legislators, two very, very different worlds, usually trying to accomplish the same goal, but in a different way. Then you have the vendor community, and there can either be, I don't trust you because you're not me. And we've seen that before. Several different verticals, they're all by themselves. That's probably one of our biggest challenges, is building that culture of trust between all these vendors and, state leaders and all the different verticals. That's a tough one to do.
What I've found is one of the fastest ways is to build cohesion around a mission, a unifying goal or vision or mission, right? And this is nothing new. It's been tried over time and space, and the military does it really well. You throw a bunch of people together in usually a very rapid, intense environment, and how do you build trust in that? Well, there's a unified mission, and you may not know the person to your left and right, really, sometimes, but at least there's cohesion around, okay, this is what we're trying to do, or this is where we're trying to go. And so when you have that, then it creates an environment of trust around the mission, not a person, but around a mission. And you can create that same environment in the business world, in the government world, but you need a person to point at the mission and say, this is not about me, this is about the mission. It has to be selfless in how you focus on where are we trying to go, and everyone unite around that. But if you have someone who is more focused on self-promotion or themselves or their agenda, there will be an air of uncertainty or unease. And then the crazy things happen, and that's where the IG has to step in and remind everyone of the standards and the mission.
You mentioned something about trust, kind of the opposite of that being risk. And I thought that was a really unique way of looking at that, because, oftentimes one of the roles of the Inspector General is to help the organization understand its risks and what it's facing. And oftentimes those risks can skyrocket if the culture is not sound, or if the mission is not clear, or if someone has taken the mission and is chosen to contort it into a way that is self-fulfilling. And you're right, that is when the Inspector General comes in. But we have a duty to report what we find and try to do that in such a way that it's based upon the facts and provable information or provable artifacts or evidence to support what we're saying. And, report writing is so key to what we do, and to be able to convey very complex ideas in a very succinct, short, non-embellished, fact-based statement is so critically important for us to try to get right in delivering our work to decision makers. And if we can't report our work in a concise, understandable fashion, then we haven't fulfilled the mission.
Yeah, well, and it's not just clear to you. That's one of the biggest challenges, is we speak so many different languages here, from what a vendor would, frame something as versus a legislator versus an agency.
Sure.
And you have to have those reports that are understood by all of them.
Absolutely. I remember one of the projects that we worked on early in the administration was a project where we were having to go back and assess an organization that had dealt with some 13 vendors over a decade of work with something like 11 agency heads over that tenure, and trying to understand and analyze the history of that project in bite-sized pieces in a way that we could weave it together to explain what occurred was extremely important, and not an easy feat, but we were able to do that and do it in a way that communicated, I think, concise recommendations, actionable recommendations to the administration. Not an easy job, and not everybody wants to be an Inspector General. Trust me, when the elevator doors open and people stop talking, I mean, you're not being invited to go to backyard barbecues or hang out on a weekend, But, we're here for a very specific purpose. But if we can do it in a way that is taking advantage of that speed of trust, not working at sword's point with management, but with management, so that we understand their perspective, what means, what means value to them, and how we can bolster their mission, then I think that we can, do what is a very tough job.
Well, and I'll tell you from the perspective of being in agencies and leading organizations where I've had IGs come in and do reviews and do investigations. I've been on the pointy end of the gotcha game, and I've been on the pointy end of the value game. And I will tell you my perspective from all the interactions I've had is I appreciated, and I hope that whoever's listening to this in the agency land understands that the amount of value that the Inspector General's office can bring to your business unit is tremendous. Because if you work collaboratively with them, they can build a risk profile of your organization and show you where your gaps are, where you're missing internal controls, where you need to shore up things. And that's immensely valuable because you're trying to run your business. And most of the time, you don't have time to do that.
Sure.
And you have this almost like free contracted services coming in to help identify those things for you, right? And I think a lot of it's perspective, because I've been in an organization where there was an investigation going on. I wasn't the leader, but it was hostile. It was very much like the IG's here, like we're going to bow up. It's treated them like internal affairs type of situation. And it didn't go well for anybody.
Sure.
And the end product was not a value add because there was resistance and it was discarded. But I've taken the perspective, and it's required me to change my team's attitude about it. Say, no, this is good. They're going to identify gaps, and then we get to choose, right, how we fill those gaps or not. And if not, there's consequences, but at least it's a risk profile. So what would you tell people about what should their perspective be when an IG is trying to come in and trying to come alongside them and say, hey, we're here to do a body of work. I mean, the audit plan is kind of out there at some agencies, like what they're going to do. And so there shouldn't be a fear of like, oh my goodness, they just showed up, gotcha. No, the audit plan's usually, at least the schedule of what that IG at that agency is going to do has been laid out for the year. And so it's much more methodical, I think, than people realize.
Sure. I think of an example of kind of where you're, I think, headed or asking about. And it relates to the recent mandate for doing cybersecurity audits. In 2021, the agency inspectors general now are responsible for building in a specific cybersecurity audit in our process, in our audit plans. And so one of the things that we've done is try to take advantage of all available information about risk, try to assimilate that information so we can make an educated choice about what we're auditing. And one of the things that we've done is we've built that audit plan across the inspector general community with our subject matter experts, those that are certified in information systems auditors or IT type related credentials. And we're using those subject matter experts to build this audit plan. We then provide the audit plan out to the CIOs and the ISMs and the agencies for them to comment, see it, use it as a guidebook, use it as a playbook, use it as a direction manual almost, so that they can go ahead and begin working right away, so that there's no surprises, there's no gotcha, there's absolutely complete transparency on what we're going to be testing and how we're going to be testing it and at what interval. They can use that playbook ahead of time to go ahead and begin implementing tighter controls or gathering their artifacts to demonstrate that they are complying with a particular NIST standard. We seek and get feedback from FLDS on the front end of that choice of when we decide what we're going to audit. We ask for that feedback from management so that we are going where they want us to go, kind of, playing hockey. I think you've got the
skate to the puck.
Skate to the puck. Yeah, we want to be able to, set them up for a good benefit and value of this process, so that we can scrutinize what they want to hear, what they want tested, so we know where to provide value to them and give it in a way, and sit down with them and ask them, how do you want this information presented? What does it mean to you? How can we give this to you in the most meaningful way? And being able to take that information and customize it for your end user, so that hopefully they'll benefit, and then use that very audit and the results to maybe fund the legislative budget request, maybe match it up with their agency LBRs on the back end. Our cycle time from doing the audit to getting the impact is now shortened dramatically, because we're getting the feedback from the ISMs and the CIOs, we're getting feedback from FLDS, we're customizing our audit program so that we can add value to our customer, so that we know what standard do they want to use. I tell Jeremy Rogers, I'll audit to whatever you pick. Just tell me which framework you want. Yeah. And he's sticking with the NIST control cybersecurity framework, and that's working for us. And as long as that's the standard that they want us to audit to, that's what we'll audit to. So I think that having that transparency and that openness, kind of going also to that speed of trust and cultivating that trust over time, hopefully will make it a better end product for all of us, so that we will be a more cyber resilient state.
It's interesting that everything tends to come back to one thing. It's mitigating risk. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the conversations we have with our members all the time, because they may be upset that a state agency has audacity to put this within a new project coming down the road. But if you look at it first from the state standpoint of they're wanting to mitigate risk, so how can you help them do that?
Sure.
To me, that actually gives a private sector business an edge once they realize that is the probably number one. In fact, I had a former CIO tell me, look, Jim, if you just told your members, if they said, we will accept all risk there is for the state, they could probably have every single state contract there is, because it's just how much of how important that is to our agencies.
Well, I think a key is people react instead of pausing. So I'd say, don't react, don't overreact. First, seek to understand, right? Understand what's going on, understand the risks that you may not see that an agency is managing, and why they're doing what they're doing. Because from the outside, it might seem nonsensical, right? Mm-hmm. But when you begin to understand the why of why they're doing what they're doing, what I've found is people are like, they have moments of clarity. It's like, first seek to understand, and that'll give you, it'll illuminate what an agency is trying to do. and they might be dealing within a construct that was given to them that is very challenging, but that's the construct they have to operate in.
It's one of the things we do the CIO training for folks that are interested. They're in state government. They would like to become a CIO, and bless them, because that is quite the job. Yeah, it is. But that is one of the things that we really stress is not to react, but to respond, because there is a difference, and you'll see it. The folks that just immediately react, they're going to pay that price later. It's not going and taking all the information to try and do an assessment of where you're at and what the right response would be.
Today's podcast series is brought to you by MyGovGuide. With features like the fiscal year timeline, you can stay on top of crucial deadlines and budget cycles. Quickly access the state of Florida's organizational structure, giving you a clear view of agency leadership and responsibilities. Looking for opportunities? The Browse Bids page makes it easy to stay updated on active procurements across the state. And as a member of the Florida Technology Council, you get a 10% discount on MyGovGuide subscriptions. Thanks again to MyGovGuide for sponsoring our podcast series and supporting those who serve the public.
Leadership is one element, but there's so many parts to that. I know we've talked in the past about drills. What do you do? What is that repetition within your life personally and then professionally that you focus on?
Sure. So one of the things that I'm doing right now personally is I'm doing some training to get back into a fitness level with my cycling. I used to be a distance cycler, hurt my shoulder. I'm in the process of trying to remediate some of the injury.
Wait, how do you hurt a shoulder riding a bike? You're riding your bicycle really wrong.
Yeah, no, so. I hurt it lifting something. It wasn't even on the bike. But yeah, but I'm trying to do some drills and some speed things, and trying to do some exercises, getting back on the bike, and setting goals and setting certain things that I want to do and accomplish. So I've done a 100-mile bike ride in the past. Love doing those. I mean, they're just amazing. But I'm not there yet, not to do one right now. So I did 20 miles on the weekend. And so, you get back in and you do what you set out to do and set goals and try to accomplish the goals and set personal records.
Or done drills or worked out a day in your life?
No, not
at all.
No.
Excuse me.
Yeah, the military, they don't care about that stuff.
No.
Yes, very familiar with drills and the incremental gain that you get from being disciplined.
Sure.
And what I was taught was learn to love the process, not the outcome.
Oh, I love that.
Because then the outcome will happen. If you're just focused on the outcome, then you'll lose your way on the process, and it'll be a lot harder to get to the end result.
I wish I'd had that tidbit of information whenever I first started out. I think that's a really good message for even young professionals. If you love the process, I think that is kind of a message on how to enjoy a career. You find something that you love doing, and then you do it, and where you would maybe even perhaps do it for free. Then you're never going to work a day in your life. And I feel like, that's kind of, if you enjoy the process of working, or maybe or project management, or, report writing, or whatever it is, then, you'll never work a day in your life.
Well, and it's breaking it down to the smallest steps, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people look at goals, whether it's in their personal life or professional life, as like the Mount Everest. And it's like, how do I summit Mount Everest? Well, it's one step at a time, all the way from the gear I'm going to buy and waking up that morning and going and shopping for the right gear. And it's every little baby step. Nutrition. Waking up every single day, making up your bed, brushing your teeth. Yep. I know it may sound silly, but those are the steps.
Handling the basics.
Handle the basics every single day.
Every single day.
And it's that incremental improvement every day and everything that you do. And
lifelong.
It compounds.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're halfway there.
And now you've achieved your outcome.
Yes.
Boy, this is a tough time to have that message, though. I mean, it's needed now more than ever, but that does seem to be, in fact, technology gets the blame for that. Is, well, look, we can shortcut all of that because we have this new technology that can basically do your college education for you, but it can't.
Unethically.
Well, I think
it can be a tool.
Maybe a tool. There you go.
I think people will blame things, technology being one of them, but we've long since lived in a fast food society where everyone, I want what I want and I want it now. The problem with that, and I think technology in some ways has accelerated some of that problem, is even if it gets you the degree faster now or the thing faster now, if you haven't built the basics, the substance of who you are and the knowledge, it's going to get you way out over your skis, and you're going to be in trouble unless you surround yourself with the right tools and the right people. And we're in a place right now where the attainment of knowledge is essential and powerful and at your fingertips with technology. So I used to hear the statement, knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is the potential for power. Yeah. Knowledge applied is power, right? And what technology can't always do is apply the knowledge in key areas. That takes human action. You have to act upon that knowledge and apply it in order for you to create the power that comes, the influence, the responsibility that comes. And that is, in many ways, still an innately human thing.
Right.
And so it is incumbent upon the individual to pay attention to the things that are innately human that technology can't do and focus on being knowledgeable and capable in those areas.
And authentic.
And authentic, yes.
And that may be the shift that we're seeing, because we're struggling now, nationally, probably worldwide, on our education institutions and what do they do and where does technology play a role with that. But the reality is technology can bring content to you so much faster, give you the ability and put you in a position to learn so much more, so much quicker. But it cannot do the application. I think that probably is our key, even for our education institutions, for our companies, is now how do I apply that? How do I enact this?
And I'll give you a simple example, right? Let's say you have a goal you want to achieve. You want to work out, you want to put on some muscle mass, you want to lean down, you want to be able to cycle, whatever goals, right? Historically, you'd have to do research or go to a gym, hire a trainer, stuff like that. We're in a different world now. For example, I went on ChatGPT the other day, and I'm kind of changing some of my workout goals, and I literally gave it 2 sentences. I said, here's kind of my current stats, here's what I want to achieve, and here's when I want to achieve it. I didn't even ask it for a nutritional plan. I just asked it for a fitness plan. And in a matter of 1 second, it spits out a full-blown plan broken down by sets, reps, workouts, days, and then it gives me a whole macronutrient plan with the food, the days, splits, superset, like everything in 1 second. I'm like, that was a nutritionist, that was a trainer, that was all in 1 second, and it laid it all out. Now, just like having a gym membership, that doesn't do a hill of beans
That's
good
right.
for you.
You don't use it or
unless
deploy it.
you deploy it, you apply it in your life. You got to put in the work, but it built it for you. So there's the knowledge. So you've attained it. Now what are you going to do with it? Act. You have to act, and that's still up to you.
So that's where the power is.
Yes.
Yes.
Which goes back to trainings that we have talked about before. You can have all the information, but use that same analogy. I've seen people with workout programs. They get in that gym and, oh my goodness, are they doing those exercises incorrectly? But they have the information. They don't know how to apply it.
Yeah.
So
that's where you got to train.
Yeah.
Build the muscle memory. Go through the motions. Learn to love the process.
Yeah. I had a mentor once that said perfect practice, not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect.
Yes. I had a football coach who said that. I didn't like it at the time.
And what's our modern day slogan for that? That is garbage in, garbage out. That, for AI. It's the same thing. It's as good as you put in, what you get out. Yep. So back to that anniversary of yours.
Sure.
Because all of that tied into the process and the trainings and so where does that put us today?
Well, I believe that 30 years later, the Inspector General model still exists in Florida. We've had a couple of modifications to the Inspector General Act, and that has only made us better and more improved. I think that hopefully the Inspector General Act will continue to learn, but I think that having that training and doing those drills are going to be so fundamental to ensure that we have our success. But it kind of adopting some of these philosophies, like making sure that you have those fundamentals in order to add value are going to be critical for us to continue to be relevant to our agencies so that we can listen really with that servant's heart, understand and process what that mission is, that shared vision, and then be able to implement the Inspector General program according to the standards, according to the statute, according to the way we've been trained, is the way that we're going to continue to improve. One of the things that we were able to adopt just 15 years ago was an accreditation program. It was the first program of its kind in the nation. And we were able to adopt that because our internal audit shops had already been applying professional standards. And they already had to go through peer review to make sure that you got the good housekeeping seal of approval. But the investigative side did not have that. So we worked with the Commission for Law Enforcement Accreditation to implement and adopt a program that now accredits every single one of our state agencies so that we have a good housekeeping seal of approval that says that we've met our professional standards, that we achieve and excel in our professional standards so that we can continue doing the good and hard work of what the inspectors general do every single day.
Are you still enjoying this job and what you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember 15 years before I ever was appointed as the Chief Inspector General, I said, one day I'm going to be the Chief Inspector General for the state of Florida. And I've been able to accomplish that. And I've had the privilege of working beside 3 phenomenal governors, and I've been appointed in the Chief Inspector General role. And I think that it is one of the best jobs that anybody could ever have if you're doing it right and doing it with a servant's heart and not using it against government, but using to improve government. And I think that having served in this particular role has been one of the biggest blessings of my entire career. And I look forward to another good 30 years to go. So
we are very grateful for the folks who had the vision for creating all of this, and to you for the work that you do.
well, thank you.
So, and I'm very grateful that I don't get inspected ever by the Inspector General's
Right.
office, to my knowledge. So,
To your knowledge. And I will say, having had the opportunity to work with you in one of those administrations, especially on a particular incident where we were involved and you were very closely involved in bringing to the attention to all some significant fraud, waste, and abuse, and what you did to not only uncover it, and one of your agency IGs just was persistent and dogged, and he knew there was a problem, and you supported him, and it eventually revealed a significant problem that then created a scenario where the state was able to claw back money that was used in a scheme. You and your team were consummate professionals and allies, and
Glad to hear that.
it was doing God's work.
Well,
and
thank you.
I tremendously enjoyed working with you,
Well,
even
thank
though the
you.
situation was not a fun situation.
Sure, I appreciate that. I've enjoyed it very, very much.
names. We just
I'm
want
not giving them
names,
up.
phone numbers. I had to try. Melinda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Appreciate the
being here.
opportunity.